Presented exclusively by Mother's Polish.
Welcome back to another episode of the Slipstream podcast. The boys were back on the track this week in the supposedly flare-free Netherlands, and we are here to bring you everything the week entailed. I'm joined by our co-hosts Brady Stin and Cole Trickle Jr. So let's jump right into the start of the week with the off-the-track drama with our expert Cole Trickle.
Yeah, guys, welcome back. I'm glad that everybody can make this weekend. Big stuff happening for Formula One. McLaren officially signs Oscar Piastri. We know it's been coming for a long time. Everyone's so excited for Landy and Oski P in 23. It leaves Daniel Ricciardo wide open. We don't know what happens to him. But yeah, Oscar is confirmed for next year. It sounds like the report came out that after Daniel Ricciardo finished second to last in Silverstone back on July the 3rd, that Zach and the guys at McLaren sat down with Oscar and they signed him to either a potential reserve seat or to a actual 23 seat. But he signed his contract the day after Daniel Ricciardo finished second to last in Silverstone. So July the 3rd, Daniel finishes terribly in the race. July the 4th, they sign Oscar. Daniel comes out like 9 days later and has a whole ordeal that he's committed to the team and he can't wait to stick around and keep fighting. And the whole time, Oscar's under contract. So big stuff going on for McLaren. We cannot wait for Oscar next season.
So did Alpine find out this weekend? I mean, I know we kind of knew Oski put that announcement out a few weeks back that he would not drive for Alpine. Is that when they found out, or did he actually tell them face to face or in a meeting or whatever like that?
It sounds like so Fernando dropped the bombshell and they find out that Fernando is leaving to go to Aston Martin in a press release. As soon as they find out, Otmar apparently walks down to the simulator where Oscar is testing, and he lets him know that he's going to have the seat for next year. And Oscar kind of nods his head and just says, okay, doesn't really fight it back. Apparently, there are people in the team around at that moment, so he doesn't want to make it uncomfortable. But later on that day or a couple days later, Oscar does let Alpine know, supposedly from Oscar's side, that he will be leaving the team. So I don't know if it's an Alpine huge mistake or if it's honestly just an Otmar not managing his drivers properly.
It seems like if one left and the other one didn't want to stay, it seems like there's some internal issues on that Alpine side. But then it also looks like that on the McLaren side, that Danny Rick is putting out statements about how he's committed through 2023 and he wants to make this better while they've got his incumbent already under contract. Maybe a little shady business there too, but business is business. So.
Shady business still earned him over $20 million to get out of his contract, so I don't feel too terrible for him.
I agree. The other two news points about the off the track would be Ferrari and Mick Schumacher. Schumacher is out of the Ferrari Academy. Anything on that? Any news of his potential going forward in F1? Does he have a seat next year?
No confirmed seat. So leaving the Ferrari Driver Academy just really puts his Haas seat more in jeopardy. He, being a Haas constructor, they run Ferrari engines, power. They run Ferrari. They are Ferrari branded Haas. So he kind of had that Haas seat being the Ferrari driver. Next season, he's been told he needs to score more points to keep his seat. There have been rumors that have linked him to potential Alpine because, Esteban Ocon, he and Mick go back and they're good friends. There were ties up until today to him potentially going to AlphaTauri, but Dr. Helmut Marko came out today and said that they were not interested in Mick Schumacher. So at this moment, it's either going to be Haas or Williams, and it kind of depends on Daniel Ricciardo as well. If there's two seats, there's two hot drivers to potentially get them, but We don't know who ends up where yet.
And speaking of Williams, everybody's favorite F1 driver, Latifi, it's not, I guess, official, but the reports are that, as everyone expected, he is out after this season. But
Yeah,
enough on the off the. Go for it. Yeah.
is there any doubt about that? Right? Like, does anyone question Latifi losing his seat? They did come out a few days ago and say that if he performed well the second half of the season, that he would potentially keep his seat, and he continues to finish dead last in FP1, FP2, FP3. He
But
does not.
that's such a loaded answer because they knew he wouldn't perform well. Like, yeah, if you do, it's like with my kids. Like if you eat all your supper, you can have dessert. But you're not going to eat all your supper, so you're not going to have dessert.
Yeah, but Daddy Latifi's got the dollar bills, y'all. So you know,
Yeah.
keep that coming in. I mean, Williams is it's an American owned company more or less now, but there's I'm going to say there's a 0% chance Latifi has that seat next year, but God bless him, he always finishes last. He's in the Mazepin of this season.
We'll always have first place in FP3 a month and a half or so back. So good for Latifi. Uh, done with the off the track stuff. Let's get back to actual racing on the track stuff. Um, we'll go to practice. Sten is our Max aficionado. He is also knows the ins and outs of about every part of the F1 car. Can you give us a little breakdown on that Max issue that he had, the issue with his gearbox in practice, and what that meant for him then? And then obviously, he still won the race, but did it affect him or the team at all?
I wish I knew everything. I just act like I know a lot, and I just read a lot of articles. So kudos to all of the other wonderful websites and content creators that I subscribe to. But no, so there's a different pool of hardware that the teams can use. The difference of like practice is that you're not under parc ferme. Parc ferme just means that you are locked to only use those parts to those exact specs. Once you reach qualifying, you are then under parc ferme and you can't change a part into a different piece, a non-comparable piece, so like rear wing or front wing or whatever. So in practice, Max and Red Bull had an issue with the gearbox. They got approval from the FIA to break the seal on the gearbox, to go through, check everything out. Again, it's a practice gearbox that they were using, or really like one of the older race gearboxes. So they have so many parts and they just rotate parts in and out throughout the weekend and throughout other weekends. So they just had an issue with the gearbox. Luckily, it was a practice part and they weren't under parc ferme. So it didn't really mean anything. They didn't need to add another part to their allocation, which is where you start seeing the penalties like we saw last week in Belgium. But other than that, like practice really, it's, it's always interesting to see what happens in practice. Like, a team might be really far behind on a Friday, but like Red Bull looked really slow on Friday. Fast forward to Sunday night, like we were completely wrong with what practice showed on Friday.
Can you really ever gain much out of practice? I mean, I know the team can, but from as a viewer, they're testing so many different things and so many different, you know, tire combinations and just trying to gain data. Are you getting much of anything, or just is it more for the team and they're doing it and we're just making a big deal out of essentially nothing?
Well, I think that we probably spend a little bit more time because we use grid rivals and we try to set our fantasy lineup based on what happens in practice sessions. So thanks, Danny Rick, for doing so well in practice and shitting the bed in the race. But no, I mean it's always interesting to see the cars on the grid, see how they're doing, what they're doing, if they bring new components, and maybe how that might shake out for the race. A lot of testing. There's really cool stuff if you ever watch it and you haven't. Like they put like glow paint on the front of the cars, and as they're driving through, the paint will like rush off the back of the vehicle, and based on how the paint is flowing off the vehicle, it's literally called flow vis. You know, like what the aerodynamics are doing. So the teams gain a whole lot. I mean, they change their setups, they change their strategies, they learn about the tire compounds, what works well, what doesn't well. But for the fan, it's, it just, you get 3 days of cars on the track, really. That's why I love watching it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun from a fan perspective. I do think it's something that, like you said, the team gets a lot out of it, and then we just make a big deal if somebody doesn't perform that well from it. On to qualifying. Anything that stood out? Anything that was big to anybody out for y'all? Anybody stand out or didn't stand out?
Mick Schumacher had a great qualifying session. Not a great race, but I think he qualified P8, which might have been his highest qualifying session of the season. I'm maybe not 100% about that, but I thought that Mick trying to fight for his seat looked really quick in qualifying.
It was interesting seeing. I don't know if you guys had seen the side by side. So F1 like YouTube channel will come out a lot with some content showing like the pole lap, or if it's really close, they'll do like a side by side comparison of the two, like first and second, um, you know, uh, and where they are in their placement. So, um, Charles should have had pole. I had kind of hinted towards it the way that the Ferrari should be working. They should have had pole, but I don't know if you guys saw, but Charles just had a little snap of oversteer, and I think it was turn 9 that lost him about 2 tenths. And if you look at it when it's all said and done, and Max won by what 27 thousandths, so just under 300ths. It should have been Charles's pole to start with. I know that their one lap pace is really impressive. Their race pace hasn't been so good. Um, so I don't know if the race really would have changed, but qualifying would have been a little bit different.
I think I read somewhere that Charles was up 5 tenths before sector 3 on his Q3 push lap. So he was up before he exited the last banked turn to go down the straight where Red Bull just pulled on him.
I mean, I'm
He
pretty
he
sure. I thought he went purple and then green, sector 1, sector 2.
he
He
was
was
he
on it.
was yellow in sector 2 on his
Okay.
second F3 or Q3 push lap, but he was Cole. I think he was like 3 or 3.5 tenths going into the penultimate, like the next to last turn, and the straight line speed of the Red Bull, which we might get into, like we've already covered it a lot in prior episodes, is really impressive. Even without a slipstream or a DRS, they're really fast. And Max was able to, you know, run down the Ghost Driver, as we all are familiar with, in Mario Kart and Formula One 2022.
Yeah, and then I guess the only really other thing from qualifying was, you had a couple of guys pushing, which I don't think they would catch Max, but maybe they'd catch up a spot or two, and then Checo loses it right there at the end, and they have to yellow flag the end of qualifying, which kind of ruined a couple of laps. Some things may have changed, but some things may not have. All right, so on to the race. What everybody's here for, what everybody kind of shows up to and wants to watch. Just going from the start, you get two drivers in Max and Leclerc starting, and they're off to a great start. Both of them get a good jump, which hasn't been the case for Max in a lot of races this year, and he just closed off Leclerc perfectly. And then Austin, he was what, half a second to a second almost up on him getting into sector 3 just on the first lap. Just how quickly he got out once he got off of that first turn.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good jump. You saw that the reaction times were roughly a quarter second. They were within a couple of thousandths of each other, really, really quick. Leclerc, their car is just faster on acceleration. We've kind of seen that. It's got a really like kind of squatty car. It's got a lot of great downforce, so the wheel spin isn't as bad. They have great acceleration, which is the trade off on top speed. So like Leclerc was faster getting to turn one, but because he started however many meters back, Max covered him off. He had a clean line. I don't know if Leclerc maybe went up on the high side, but turn one shortly, a little bit behind them. You look at Carlos and you look at Lewis. Carlos kind of keeps it in the middle of the track, which is usually faster on a slightly banked turn like that. Lewis gets a little bit, wide, puts it into Carlos's side pod, gets a little snap of oversteer to correct it, and keep going. And I think that's what Carlos said kind of ruined his race from there on.
So speaking of that, Lewis almost goes out again, or had a chance to go out potentially back-to-back races. But when that happened, they show the replay of Angela Cullen, Lewis Hamilton's physiologist. Is at this point, don't include drivers. Is she like the fifth most recognizable person in the paddock outside of drivers? I swear it's Toto, Christian, and then her that get more camera time in the paddock than anybody else.
She gets a lot of airtime. She's always touching his car. Like there's always that moment that she's got a hand on his car to set the energy right or whatever it is. But she does get, I don't think there's anybody other than, you're right, than drivers and team principals who has camera time than she does.
Yeah, and I mean, I know they go back a long ways, but it just seems like when any good or bad, you're getting either a Toto replay or a replay of her. I think it's.
Toto's looked real angry recently. That, the preppy, like the sweater over his shoulders, he's got it tied off.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of had that mean mug. The first few laps, they panned over to him a few times, and I was like, Toto kind of looks like he did in Abu Dhabi. He does not look real happy.
Yeah, and they had a good car this weekend. He just seems
not winning.
Pissed off. Yeah.
When you're 7-time, right? It's 8-time constructor. Yeah.
It is so great though how much he's lobbying for change, and how, Red Bull running away right now isn't great for the sport and things need to happen. It's like, dude, like, again, I'm a Red Bull fan, so I'm gonna defend the team because it's been a long time since they were relevant in the constructors. But you just outright won the last 8 constructors championships.
Not one.
Why are you mad?
Smoked every other team. I love that he's upset. I think it's great.
I don't know. Do we even know it? Even when they win, sometimes you don't know what he's feeling on the inside. Maybe he just doesn't know how to be happy. I don't know. The other interesting thing that I thought about the start before getting, even before they left, was that essentially out of everybody in the top 10 except Mercedes started on softs. Is that or close to it? And they went to mediums. I mean, what is y'all's thought process on that? I mean, was that them already saying we're going to try to make this a one stopper if possible?
Yeah, so if you look at it, you've got Russell, Hamilton, Norris, and then out of the top 10, Albon, Schumacher, and Magnussen on mediums. Yeah, I mean, Pirelli came out and said that it's probably a 1 or 2 stopper, and you can go either way. And I think that if you start on the mediums, you're planning for, without any interference from VSCs or safety cars, the 1 stopper. And it looked like they were kind of making it work. I think Norris was doing really well with that start too. But as soon as you start having safety cars and VSCs, like look at Sainz's race kind of get ruined in France, where he was on the alternate strategy. And then there was an early safety car. He kind of got put on the back foot and was playing catch up. I think that's maybe what kind of happened to Mercedes. It can work out wonderfully, but if you're on the alternate strategy and something happens that's not in your favor, you're completely neutralized. I've seen that in F1 2022 all the time. I yell at you guys all the time for causing safety cars.
It's not my fault.
Some of them are my fault. Some of them are intentionally intentionally my fault. Like
We've
this
had a
past
lot
week
of
in
intentional
Netherlands.
safety cars. I feel
Yeah,
like we've
we
had a
got to
lot,
I
like a
gotta.
fair amount.
You know, we people don't know we had to race in the rain last week, and I can't drive in perfect conditions, much less when I can't see and I can't control the car ever. But that was if anybody can catch our Twitch on the Slipstream podcast Wednesday nights, um, you'll be able to watch Brady and Sten and Cole uh, for about 40 laps every race, and you'll catch me for about 5, and you can then view my broadcast mode of everybody else for the rest of the way.
Well, shout out to
So
F122. Their broadcast mode is spectacular, so we appreciate that they've put in the work for that because
it's
it looks
beautiful.
great when you wreck out.
All right, so getting along in the race, one of the more impressive parts, in my opinion, of the race, and I don't know if Haas hired Vettel for this race or not, but K-Mag essentially drifting through the gravel. How he,
Incredible.
if y'all can
Incredible he didn't
explain to
total that
me
car.
how, yeah, if y'all can explain that to me, I have zero idea how he saved that.
I feel like I've done that a handful of times in the silly video game F122, but for K-Mag to do that in real life and for it to end up straight and him not to really clip the wall, I mean, it was kind of a miracle that he didn't total his car touching the wall there. He came in
I think
full speed. Go ahead.
I think it was Jensen who was commenting when it happened, and they went back and watched like the onboard, like the T cam, and he's like, "Oh man, like he just survived a double snap of oversteer. Like he oversteered, he corrected it, it didn't do enough. He oversteered again, and yeah, he brushed it. I think coming out of that replay, you could see like the white like stripe on the outside of the vehicle, on the outside of the car where he like brushed the barrier, and then he pretty much had to like, the wheel like goes 360 degrees. He let go of the wheel to try to lock it to make sure that he counter steered when he re-entered turn 3 to not hit anyone. And I think it Botas or Joe at the top, that just stayed highline hoping that he avoided a crash. And is that lap 2, I think?
It was early.
Yeah,
I don't know what lap it was.
yeah, and that was the other thing is how he was able to control it to not total his car, but then control it so that he doesn't shoot himself back onto the track into somebody else. Um, that was pretty impressive. But in in the end of the race, we kind of got what everybody has was hoping to see at the beginning of this season was essentially this battle of Max and Lewis. We get there, we're however many races in at this point, 13, 14, whatever, 15, whatever we're at now. And it just seems like we finally got there. And, strategy or whatever, I'll kind of let y'all take it away on your thoughts on that. But, um, yeah, Lewis and Max, we finally got the battle we wanted to see after last season in Abu and everything like that. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, we didn't really see them actually wheel to wheel, but there was a chance that we were going to get that potentially, and then some crazy business happened to some. Whether you want to say it's unlucky if you're a Mercedes fan, lucky if you're a Red Bull fan, don't need the luck if you're a Red Bull fan, but it essentially, the first part, it starts off when Lewis is going up the front straight and Vettel comes out of the pits, and he's got the shoulders and the elbows just as far out wide, even though he's blue flagged. And how many seconds did he hold him up again? What was that?
It was
Three and a
something like
half?
three.
Yeah,
Yeah,
3.
so it was cool seeing so Lewis was trying to overtake Sergio lap 20, 25 or so. It was fairly early. Failed the first attempt. Sergio locked up into turn one. They both went a little bit wide, lived to see another lap. They kept pushing on. Next lap comes by. Lewis makes it, has it stick. Comes around turn one, and you've got Vettel, who's leaving the pit lane. Seems to be pretty slow, but just goes directly onto the racing line. There are the little teleprompters, the little screens flashing of like, blue flag, car number or whatever, yellow flag, red flag, whatever. And Vettel just stayed on the racing line for the next 5 turns. It forced Lewis to nearly get overtaken out of turn three. Sergio kind of did a low dive bomb, but it definitely cost him some time. Why are we leaving Stroll out of this?
Did he get penalized for it at the long run?
He got a penalty point. Yeah.
A point, not seconds.
I don't think the seconds matter when you're out of,
Yeah.
but
He definitely should have. I
he
mean,
got a penalty point.
he was very clearly impeding but it was great to see. Slow Lewis up just that little bit to give Checo a chance around the bank. It was awesome to watch.
How long or how many times are you essentially blue flagged before a penalty? Like, how long do you have to get out of the way?
I think you're given 5 flashes of the markers. Like you can pass 5 of those boards, those marker boards, before you're like given what the black and white, Jay.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's 5 or not, but he was there too long. Everybody knew it. The broadcast knew it. It was great to watch him slow Lewis up, but he was definitely impeding the speed of Lewis.
It's like a sector, so you have a third of the lap pretty much to get out of the way.
And then after that, um, Yuki pulls off to the side, and his comms audio is essentially, he doesn't think that a wheel is tightened on his car, is what it seems like. He's off the track, but there's no VSC, I believe, no safety car. And then they're like, yeah, you're good. Keep going. He continues to drive, get extremely slowly, and gets into the pits. And now it's a seat belt issue.
It's a
That's,
seatbelt issue because he undid his seatbelt on the track.
well, that's a fine in real life. I don't think you should
It's
do that on
it's
the
a
F1 track.
10 place grid penalty in Monza next week because
It's
he
a
drove on the track without a seatbelt securely fastened.
and it's a 10-place grid penalty, and it's a way to be told where to go park your car when you leave the pits the next time to get the safety car. Is that what it gets you? Okay, I
Did he
just
even make it out of the pit lane the
he
second time before they told him he had an issue? Like he wasn't even back up to racing pace.
Barely. He was on the track, but it was not. It was a few seconds that he said he had issues.
we need you to go park like after turn 3 where you're in the sand and so they can't push you out. Mm. Mm.
100% no.
99.9% no. I'll say that I can tell in your face that you don't fully believe that. I can see it.
I I'm actually sitting on the other monitor, pulling up like the telemetry of when it happened and how far Max was ahead because we were talking about this before we started recording. Like I get that the broadcasters and some of you guys were also saying that like Lewis could win this race. Like Max had already pit. When Lewis had pit, Max was already on his tail. He blew by George on one straightaway. Within the next lap and a half, he was back on Lewis. They pulled Lewis into pit. Max could have then pit and replicated Mercedes' strategy right then and there on a two stop with two pits within the first 32 laps and still would have won the race. Regardless, Max rolls up, has 20 laps left on a set of softs, and still runs away with it. I don't think that they needed it. So, yes, I will say that nothing is 100%. I do love a good conspiracy, but it's not needed. Max is already up by 96 points, unless it's trying to stick it to Toto to get another great meme, which I would be fine with. It's not needed.
Well, for one, I've got a lot of conspiracy theories if we want to get into that, in one of the non-race week pods. But they didn't want Hamilton to win in Max's home track. They wanted that to me was it wasn't about the points. It was about Max winning at his home track, not letting Lewis, his biggest rival, win there. And again, I don't know if Lewis wins whether or not, but to say there's nothing wrong with your car, keep going, and then you don't even get off pit lane, and they're like, "Shit, we fucked that up." Like, how do you go? Like, that is a huge gap to cover in that point, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I buy in. I'm not sure if I buy into a conspiracy. I don't. I think that if you're gonna sacrifice somebody, sacrifice Pierre, because he's gonna be leaving the team anyway. But I have a hard time thinking that call would come down. But I will say that it is possible. It just didn't seem needed and seems very unlikely.
Um, I found it. It was on lap 48, roughly. Max was currently 17 seconds ahead of Lewis when Yuki started slowing down. The pit stop cycle was 19 seconds. So even if Max had to pit then, he's only 2 seconds behind Lewis on a brand new set of mediums, probably. So moving on. Because he was speeding in a yellow flag. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, you
I
would
agree.
think that a virtual would be Yeah, at most two. And then at that point, if the virtual safety car cannot be finished at two, then I feel like you need to roll the safety car out. And
So the virtual neutralizes the race, but it still is allowing teams to pit. So like the safety car, everyone's going to pit and everyone's going to be jumbled up. So whatever happened earlier in the race is completely negated because like any leads, anything. I will say that in this race, they were really late on making any types of calls. Like if I was a race director and I've just given, like a yellow flag, I'm hitting virtual safety car within 10 seconds. Like, neutralize the race, assess what's going on. If it's not good, all right, I'm going to hit the other red button and I'm going to make it a full safety car. But I'm not going to let it idle for a lap or two with Botas just sitting in the inside of turn one.
it boggled my mind that I mean, I'm assuming we can say he had to stop there. But yeah, the fact that it took him an entire lap when you're going, that is like you said, the number one place for overtakes. It is the fastest part of the track. And you've essentially just have a driver, a sitting duck there if anything goes on. Um, that's
Well, think about the safety, like if, let's just say that it was a science issue, like in Austria where the car catches on fire. Botas would have to jump out. Like it's a major
yeah.
safety concern. So luckily he stayed seated. He didn't unbuckle. He didn't take his like little foam, snuggie or whatever thunder coat out. And he was situated. But yeah, like you need to hit that button again. A VSC, if it's out for 30 seconds, someone might get a cheap pit stop or two. But like hit the button. If you see someone stopped on track, hit the button. If you feel like it's not safe within another 30, 40 seconds, full safety car. But if it was a full lap, what is that? A minute and 15, a minute and 18 seconds?
Yeah, I mean, an entire minute and 18 seconds for a driver just sitting idle. And like you said, I mean, if the car catches on fire or anything like that, where he has to hop out and get out, he's literally hopping out into a spot on the track where cars are going 208 miles per hour. It it didn't make any sense. Um, in the end, though, so the Botas safety car happens, and then we get the the pit choice from Mercedes, which it seems to be George is the one that called it. Um, Thoughts on Mercedes pitting George? George doing that himself? I mean, I feel like for Mercedes, your best options are either you pit both of them, which almost ensures you get second or third, or you don't pit either if you're wanting a better chance at the win. But they only pit one, and instead of going second and third or potentially a win, they go second and fourth. Would you have done anything differently?
No, I think it's the right call. I think the only way you potentially get the win is to pit George and let him to come out. I think Lewis being upset about it. I mean, I understand his thought, but George, he did ask to come in. He did ask for tires, and um, no, I wouldn't have done anything differently. I think Toto fully supported the decision.
Yeah, I think Toto said after the race that he would rather struggle to try to get Lewis a win than to settle for second and third just by default. So while it's not great that George made the call to seem like he wasn't being a team player, because if you rewind for the last 4 years, Botas does exactly what he's told. Um, Kudos to him or not, depending if you're for the driver making the call or playing the team game. But no, it looked like what George wanted to happen is, if you look at, is it Saudi Arabia last year, the second to last race, where Lewis is ahead, Botas kind of starts drifting back to allow at least an extra a little bit of buffer for that pit stop, and George could have kind of pushed Max back. He had that ability to do so. Instead, he got onto the Williams and was trying to pass the Williams going into the pit to try to get a buffer for him to give him a better chance to overcut Max in the pit stall. So it was weird regardless, but they should have pit immediately, I think. If they were going to do it, I think Max pit the lap before, which is why he was behind them. And also, we'll get to it, but driving through the pit lane with pits is just super sketchy.
It's nice to see George have a voice, though, in the team, right? To vocalize what he's looking to do. It's nice because, like you said, Valtteri really just kind of, okay, James, whatever James says is what happened. So it's nice to see George speak up, say something, put himself and give himself the best opportunity to get a win. So I'm happy he did it.
Is it a driver 1 versus driver 2 type call? Is it a future versus the past?
There were no
Maybe.
team orders in that. That was all just whatever happened. Again, Toto wanted to keep Lewis out up front. George asked to have a call be more favorable for him. I think the difference of that call is George secured himself getting second as opposed to falling back to fifth.
Do you think if it was 2 years last year or 2 years ago, and it's Botas, do you think they tell him to stay out? Do you think they
Yes.
deny him the pit?
They'd tell
Yes.
Botas to slow down, to stop Max, and to give Lewis a 3-second buffer to get Lewis to pull out in front of Botas. But
Mercedes knows that George is the future.
yeah, like George came out in third as opposed to like fifth or sixth. Yeah, it's a great call.
Yeah, I mean, I think from Georgia's standpoint, it was perfect. I mean, like he wasn't getting any better than second today, and he got that. Um, and then from the team perspective, you pit both for the most points. The only way you have a shot at the win is if you don't pit either, and I don't think that even if you don't pit either of them, Max was gonna. Maybe he doesn't catch Lewis until the second lap after the safety car instead of where he caught him before they even got to turn 1. So
It is so cool seeing the Max and his engineer GP and their kind of rapport that they've built over the last handful of years, where Max going into, two turns before he has to make that call to pit, he's like, all right, what's the deal? He's like, do I have margin to be able to take a free pit stop where you pit and you don't lose track position because you have enough time between the car behind you? And he said, no, but we're going to pitch you anyway. And Max said, cool. All right. Knowing that the conversations earlier were, the medium doesn't really feel great. I really don't want to take this along. And then when he was already on the hards, knowing that both Mercedes were on mediums, he was on a bad strategy anyway. He was going to be on a hard compound compared to two new mediums. And I think if Max didn't pit early, I think Mercedes pits both of their drivers onto new softs and they take a 1-2.
yeah, and I think the other thing with Max, um, I don't want to say I don't want to say there were errors or unforced errors or whatever, but Max being so good and that car being so good is that their margin of error is so much greater than everybody else's that the decisions they choose to make or they don't choose to make don't affect them as much as a Mercedes or a Ferrari, where those teams are having to, they almost have to, um, they almost have to force themselves into trying to get it right, where Red Bull doesn't have to do that. They can make a mistake and still win, where these other teams almost have to take a shot in the dark to even get close to them.
Speaking of not making mistakes and being on point, we skipped right over it because it's completely irrelevant. And I feel like we talk about it so frequently that we feel like we talked about it on this podcast already, which isn't the case. Ferrari, again, they pit
Again,
Sainz. They pit Sainz, and it's a late call. So like there's a point, and I think Ted mentioned it on the broadcast. Like there's a point on the track where once the driver is past that turn, a pit is not possible because you need to wrangle 17 people, get the tires, get them out of the blankets, get everything situated. They called a pit after that point, and they left Carlos Sainz sitting on 3 tires for 10 seconds when he was effectively in, I think he was in third with Checo 2 seconds behind. They forgot the rear left tire. He came out 12 seconds behind Sergio.
I've been waiting to talk. I've been waiting for it. I've been just when it happened. I like watched it happen in slow motion, and I saw the rear right tire guy make his change, and I like glanced over to the left side, and I was like, "There's literally no one there. There's no one at the tire right now." And poor Carlos, happy birthday, buddy. We told you were going to get a great birthday present. Ferrari did not disappoint. 12.7 seconds is what it cost him, and he had a good, oh my god, while he was sitting in the pit lane. And also on exit, Checo runs over Ferrari's tire gun as they're leaving. There has to be a fine for Ferrari somewhere. But yeah, Ferrari cannot, we say it every single week, they cannot get out of their own way. I said 4 that episode.
At least a good point is it wasn't on Charles. For what it's worth, like at least it happened to Carlos.
yeah,
Happy birthday.
if you're gonna pick one of the two, and this isn't the first time the that back left tire has been a problem. They had another issue with that same spot, not 10 seconds, but it cost them 2 or 3 seconds at one point. It was when the guy was carrying the tire like a watermelon. The tire was like half the guy's size, and they couldn't get it fit on for like 3 seconds. It was and I'm assuming it's the same guy doing the same thing. But the fact that you just don't show up to your job. Like that's essentially it for you're the back left tire guy. Like just show up with the tire, and he's playing FIFA or Madden or whatever in the back, waiting, just not even paying attention. Candy
The
Crush,
call
whatever.
came, I mean, it may have come in late, but the call did come in a turn before he got to the pits. Like I feel like there should be plenty of time to settle. I mean, obviously, every other guy had their tire ready. So
Everybody else
I don't
showed up.
understand. Right, everybody. I mean, that's your job. Get the tire, put it on. That's what you do. And I don't know how you mess it up again. But I mean, at this point, are we surprised by anything that Ferrari messes up? Because I'm really, we expect it, right? When I said I thought Ferrari would mess up 4 times, I was half joking, but I'm half serious. I'm going to say they may mess up 3 more times on top of what they've already messed up. They will continue to do this. They need to make changes desperately at Ferrari.
I was talking to my father-in-law last weekend, who is a big Formula One fan, but he watches so many other sports, rugby, MotoGP, whatever, that his DVR is full. And I kind of like explained what's been going on in the season, and I showed him a recap video of all of the Ferrari kerfuffles that have happened thus far this year, and he was completely dumbfounded with how bad they've been. I mean, even someone who knows the sport regardless, but has been removed and saw a lineup of like 9 unforced errors. It's like Favre thrown into triple coverage.
You know he's going to force that ball. Real comfortable jeans.
Yeah, I mean, good for him. I'm sure Ferrari fans would like him to stop admitting mistakes because that means he doesn't make mistakes anymore. But they can't help themselves. If you're playing blackout bingo with Ferrari's mistakes, you're about 2 away from filling up every single spot on the board. Um, all right, let's move on. We've covered about everything on the race. I want to give a shout out to one of our listeners and our followers, Lawrence Ellis. We kind of touched on his point anyway, but we appreciate sending in the question. His question was, did Mercedes make the right calls regarding Hamilton's race, or did they just have to adjust? And we touched on it a little bit before. But I think for the team, yes, we agree. For Hamilton, maybe not so much. Anything else, guys? Anything else y'all want to touch on? Anything we missed? Any questions you have? Any trivia? Anything like that? What do we got?
We should have pulled the
It was
audio clip.
beautiful.
What was it, Lewis? Like, he's right behind me on new softs. Like, you could feel like his gut sinking through the seat when he said that. But no, I did have flashbacks to our Wednesday night races when I made a double overtake on the safety car restart in Spa last weekend. Cole, you saw
Yeah,
the
it was quite
video.
the jump. He was honest to God. It looked like he had passed him before the start finish line on the restart. I feel like we need like a photo finish of the restart because it looks like he passed him. He had such a jump. I don't know why Lewis accelerated as quickly as he did coming through there. He should have waited until the start finish line to even start to accelerate. But Max got such a slipstream all the way down that he had no chance.
I think
at the
that's where
start finish.
Lewis really messed up. I think you guys hate me for it again, but like I delay that safety car restart as much as I can. And the driver has the ability to go slowly until he crosses the line, and he can't be overtaken until he crosses the line. So if Max would have overtaken Lewis before then, he would have been penalized. But Lewis should have lollygagged around, tried to warm up the tires as much as he can, do a little bit of brake magic and try to get some front temperature, not given a slipstream, and gone late, like after passing the pit entry, like halfway up the grid. But no, he went coming out of the second to last turn, and Max DRS or slipstreamed him with full ERS mode, engine mode 7, the entire way.
And
he was clear passed by turn 1
easily. And I will give credit where credit is due. Sten is very good on safety car restarts in F1 2022. He's also very good at being fourth in the safety car and then somehow passing 2 people to get into second with no penalties. So
Hey, man.
Yeah, Carlos attempted that this week. It did not.
F1
It did not go
2022,
well.
how that Sten loves it. Sten loves the ability to just pass underneath the safety car. So
Small indie company. Fix your game and I won't do it. Don't have cars stop in the middle of turn one during qualifying. And don't make it so I can blow past someone, back them up to make them outside of that 15 car length window, and then blow by them when it says, hey, overtake them because they're going too slow. Broken game, just saying.
We could do a whole podcast on EA's mishaps in that game. There's no doubt about it. But yes, Sten, you are the king of safety car overtakes. It happens every week almost because of Matt's safety car. Usually, honestly,
this is also why I don't win. It's the game in and of itself. So it's the game, not me. Agreed.
yeah, it's nice. It's nice to see a mixed podium because I feel like for so long we just saw Silver Arrows up there with a Red Bull on third for years and years. So it's nice to see some different colors up on the podium.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis Botas and Max hold the all-time record for shared podiums together.
That that's pretty incredible to think that trio, because Max is not that old, that they hold the record.
Well, it was what 20, half of 2018, all of 2019, probably all of 2020, and most of 2021. Like you have nearly 4 straight years of those guys, unless they DNF, ending on the podium. Once Ferrari was found cheating in 2018 and had to change the engine, which would happen behind closed doors. Like, yeah, but also going back to the constructors, only 3 teams remain in being able to be constructors champions after this weekend. Everyone else has been eliminated.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what we expected when at the beginning of the season when we heard the leaps and bounds that Ferrari had kind of made with their car compared to last season. Is we thought we were going to have these 3 constructors battling, uh, and Mercedes lagged behind, and that's why we weren't getting it. And now I feel like we're finally getting to where um, we want it to be for these last handful of races before this season ends. Um, but yeah, I mean, a great race, great weekend. We're off to Monza next week. Anybody have any quick thoughts on Monza um, before we bid adieu and say goodbye to the Netherlands?
I think it is actually. You might be right. I'll have to look that up. I feel like it is. Someone pull that up real fast. I mean, obviously, I think it'll be great to get Monza. And I think there will be a few other teams who have incredible straight line speed. Like I think that plays well for the Williams. Hopefully, McLaren can step up for Monza. But I think it's a strong track for a couple other teams in the big 3. So very excited for Monza and a three-peat. Come on, who doesn't love 3 races in a row?
No sprint race in Monza. The next one and final one is Brazil at the towards the
Psych.
end.
Love Brazil though.
Yeah, Monza is one of my favorite tracks, so I'm looking forward to that. It seems to be a perfect spot with some of those straightaways for Max to do what he did a lot this weekend. But bid adieu to the Netherlands. Max is leaving his home track off to Italy next week. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And shout out to anything F1 underscore on Instagram. If you want to keep up with the best F1 comments and hilarious memes, please give them a follow. They're one of our friends over there. But with that, send us on out.